Devil May Cry is a 2001 hack-and-slash action-adventure game by Capcom and is the inception for the character action genre. Originally it was planned as Resident Evil 4, a sequel for their survival horror series, and while the final game did materialise, its first pitch was a far cry from what players got on release. Hideki Kamiya, the game director, wanted to take the series in a new direction, like playing as a new character named Tony, who would later become known as Dante, and fighting supernatural creatures instead of zombies. Shinji Mikami, an executive producer at the time, did like the game overall, but felt it didn't belong in the Resident Evil universe, and persuaded Kamiya to make it a new IP. Both men didn't get along since the days of Resident Evil 2's development, but Kamiya eventually resented to Mikami's request. Devil May Cry received critical and commercial success, selling over 2 million copies, and praised for its challenging, stylish combat. But as this year marks its 20th anniversary, is Capcom's classic still entertaining in 2021? You play as Dante, a demon hunter who owns a shop called Devil May Cry, and is the son of Sparda, a demonic knight who stood against his own during the conflict between the humans and demons 2 millennia ago. Dante also lost his mother and brother to evil, and is determined to avenge both. He then encounters Trish, a young woman who storms in on a motorcycle requesting his help, not before giving some exposition and giving Dante a beating, only for him to retaliate with his pistols. Trish tells Dante that Mundus, Emperor of the Underworld, resurrected 2 decades ago and is planning to regain control by reopening the gates to the human world on Melee Island. With humanity at stake, Dante and Trish go to the location to stop Mundus and any demons that stand in their way. Despite becoming a separate IP, there are remnants from Capcom's survival horror series, like fixed camera angles, ambient music during exploration, and how you pick up and interact with items from your inventory. The game will even display the text of what Dante is investigating, similar to those in Resident Evil. However, unlike the Resident Evil where players must be cautious and decide whether to engage enemies, Devil May Cry encourages you to be offensive, primarily because of how the style meter works. Every combo performed affects this meter, going from dull to stylish, and the higher it is, the more red orbs Dante acquires. Red orbs are scattered in the levels, though it's obvious killing demons while mixing up combos is paramount for getting as many as possible, not least because they're essential for buying new skills. Dante's health and Devil Trigger, more on that later, are 2 upgradable with blue and purple orbs, although fragments of the former you can find through exploration. Finally, yellow orbs revive Dante upon death, but once you've acclimatized with the game, you'll likely avoid them for more beneficial skills, especially for multiple playthroughs. Thankfully, executing Dante's melee attacks is easy, as it's tied to one button. By pressing the triangle button rapidly, he'll perform a 3-hit strike, with the last one being a ground slap. However, delaying the third input briefly will do 2 upward swings, and prolonging it further results in a series of stabs. Some moves require you to lock onto the enemy first. Still, each string is useful, however knowing when to use them is another matter. But when factoring in the style meter, it's satisfying because it rewards improvisation. Even the boss fights are just as fun, as they test your skills while being distinct. Not to mention, every level ranks your performance, though how long you took, damage taken, and whether you relied on consumables can influence the result. Aside from melee combat, his pistols are just as important, and there are more firearms as you explore the stages. Each have their stopping power and rate of fire, but generally these are for extending combos or to blow enemies back. If that wasn't enough, he can go into demon form for extra damage, regain health and gain new attacks. What moves Dante obtains is determined on what melee weapon he's wielding, though it drains his Devil Trigger and he can still take damage. Fortunately, attacking foes, in addition to taunting them, also useful for maintaining style meter, Dante can restore his Devil Trigger. When not slaying fiends, you'll be finding keys, although because Dante carries 1 at a time, it's just a matter of taking them to the desired location so he can access the next area, and if you're wondering about getting lost, your map highlights where you need to go. Nonetheless, the game is a fun experience, but that's not without its flaws. Indeed, Devil May Cry's primary issue is the camera. Switching perspectives depending on where Dante is becomes annoying when performing combos that require directional inputs. Moreover, it does a poor job of tracking where enemies are, leaving you vulnerable for being attacked off screen. In Resident Evil, fixed camera angles made sense due to being a slow-paced experience, and obscuring foes gave a sense of dread since players had no idea what was lying in wait. It's worth noting they used tank controls, so for instance, if the main character's back was towards the player, they would have to move the left analog stick up to go forward, and no matter the perspective, they will travel in that direction. Devil May Cry doesn't function this way, as the protagonist moves relative to the camera. Acceptable for an action game, but doesn't gel with fixed viewpoints with frantic, mobile foes. Granted, some enemies have audio cues, thereby allowing you to react. However, this isn't always possible due to questionable sound mixing. I'm also not a fan of the swimming sections, as they seem out of place for a hack and slash game, despite their sparse presence, and the needle gun is only useful underwater, which brings me to my next point. There isn't much weapon variety, 3 swords and a pair of gauntlets, the former having the same moveset. As for guns, there are only 5, and not all of them are practical. Like I've said, the needle gun is only useful underwater, and the Nightmare, while does boost your style meter, needs charging for maximum damage, yet drains Dante's Devil Trigger. Add to the fact you can't switch melee weapons mid-combo, not only can combat get repetitious, but going into your inventory to switch weapons disrupts the game's flow. The story is straightforward and easy to understand, though it leaves much to be desired. Dante does get character development, first treating the situation as another routine job, but makes it a personal journey once knowing about his mother and brother. Plus, his carefree and cocky attitude enhances character arc, although he does have a cheesy line towards the end. Trish is hardly present, and only shows up when the plot needs to move forward. There is a revelation before the climax, but a lack of character development dilutes its impact. As for Mundus, while his ominous presence and will to perish his subordinates who don't stop Dante emphasise his malevolence, he doesn't have the depth for a compelling villain. To Devil May Cry's credit, the 2000s had different standards for video game storytelling, though I don't think its story holds up under modern scrutiny, especially when it's absent for most of the chapters, as most levels don't have plot relevance. That said, the voice acting is good, sound effects have punch, and the music amplifies the action, while also being eerie when out of combat. The footage on screen is from the HD collection, specifically the PS4 version with mediocre results. The upscaling to 1080p makes the gameplay crisp, as are the in-game cutscenes, but their pre-rendered counterparts didn't get the same treatment. Add to the fact some effects are missing, it's clear there was an effort put in, especially when subtitles display over text within the opening cinematic. Now I'm not deaf, and you can disable them, yet how Capcom didn't see this when remastering the game is such an oversight. Putting aside its problems, including those parts of the HD collection, I still had pleasure going through its missions. Combat is rewarding, and Dante's personality complements the action he partakes in, but the story is weak, weapons lack variety, and the camera makes specific engagements irritating. Nevertheless, it's worth playing regarding how it materialised and the impact it would have for years to come. After all, without Shinji Mikami's interference, both the game and in turn the franchise wouldn't exist. Plus, Resident Evil 4 would have been different, in contrast to what would release in 2005. Devil May Cry is an enjoyable game, even if it doesn't quite hit the jackpot.